What if we all have it wrong? Are we doing more harm to each other than Jesus really? You are listening to the Dirty Christian Podcast.
Welcome to episode 122 of the Dirty Christian Podcast. I am Drew, and I am known as the Dirty Christian. I have been finding it more and more difficult to stay motivated to record an episode every week. I'm a dirtbag. You guys can chalk that up to me just being a dirtbag. I'm alright with that. It's been... life just happens, and I'm sure most of you guys know and understand what I mean by that when I say life happens. Today being Saturday is a good day for yard work, and I was doing that, and just a lot of stuff going on. So let me just start by saying welcome to the show. If this is your first time watching or listening, I'm glad that you're here, and I apologize in advance for anything crazy that I may say or do that may seem strange or uncomfortable to you, but, welcome to the show. So I wasn't sure what topic I was going to talk about today, and, sorry, I get sidetracked here. I didn't know what I was going to talk about today, so I got hit up by Grant, who's watching, and he's like, you do the show? I mean, he's probably like the number one guy when it comes to reminding me and wanting to watch the show. So he's like, you to do a show today? And I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know what to talk about. And he's like, well, why don't you talk about the Ireland's decision to legalize abortion? So I said, I do kind of know a little bit about that. Let me go do some quick research before I have an opportunity to talk about it, just so I don't sound like a lunatic, or that I don't know what I'm talking about. And I figured I would lump that in. It's been a while since we've talked about abortion. We've got lots of new folks that have joined the page, and, maybe it's just a good idea to have that discussion again, to get everybody kind of to know where I'm at on the, my thoughts on that too. So we're going to talk about what happened over there in Ireland. We're going to talk about abortion in general. I've been very fortunate as of lately to have some good conversations with some friends who have been talking to others about abortion and have needed some advice in how to discuss that and how to defend the pro-life stance. And of course, that's very, very important to me. I would almost go to the extreme and say that any person who claims to be a Christian and is pro-choice is either very immature in their faith or is not a believer at all. Now, you'll probably say, well, Drew, how could you say something like that? How could you make such a judgment call? I think the answer is quite simple. The very minor reasons, the very low percentage reasons and medical reasons for abortion are not really the same thing as abortion as a whole. There are absolutely hard choices and decisions that a mother and father would have to make when it comes to a life-threatening circumstance for the mother or the child, where giving birth to the baby could risk the death of both the child and the mom. So there are absolutely medical circumstances that would qualify someone that would need what we would lump into the theme of abortion, but it's not really the same thing, the same rights that a person is fighting for when it comes to abortion, especially with what happened in Ireland and what we deal with in the United States. And for more information about abortion and really like people that are much smarter than me, much better versed, and have great ministries regarding abortion, if you go to wretched.tv or Apologia Church, which is headed up by Jeff Durbin, they have some great ministries that really focus on anti-abortion stuff. So I have to recommend that, do your research. Don't just take my word for it, in my opinion. But, again, when it comes to the care of children, what I think that is one of the greatest blessings that God has allowed human beings to experience is having children, raising children, creating that legacy for a family, or as a family. I think that we have to look at this topic very, very purposefully and very and consider it to be very important. So what happened in Ireland? Well, for those of you who don't know, the country of Ireland has repealed their eighth amendment, which, and I don't know a lot about Ireland politics, so I will speak only as an American trying to understand it. But essentially they repealed the law that protected babies from being killed in the womb. And it was a vote yes or no issue. Repeal the law or don't. And the law, or the vote to repeal it passed at some 66% to 39% that didn't want it repealed. Which means that women could legally have abortions now in Ireland, and apparently it was outlawed and made illegal at some point in time. Interestingly enough, the church in Rome, that used to have a very very important stance and played a huge role in the decision to outlaw abortion, initially was, for lack of better terms, was silent during this situation. The Pope not making any type of statement one way or the other, which, if you're following anything that the Pope does, first of all, I completely do not acknowledge or recognize him as any type of leader in the church. He has no biblical authority over me or any other Christian, including Catholics, though they give him that authority. So I just want to get that out there. I completely reject the idea of the papacy, so it's irrelevant to me what the Pope says. But as a political person, as a political leader in Europe, mostly, what the Pope says, it means a lot to a lot of people. So the Pope being pretty instrumental in the abolishment of abortion in Ireland previously, has now been very silent on its being allowed today. So obviously that's problematic. But if anybody follows the Pope as of lately, with some of the things that he's been saying, as speaking to a homosexual man, saying God made you that way, all of these things that are just outside of biblical truth, it shouldn't surprise. I mean, he told a kid that his father, the kid literally asked, my dad was an atheist, will I see him in heaven? And the Pope said yes. So, I mean, that's like the one thing. Like, why would you lie to a child? Have you no fear of God to make those ignorant statements? But anyway, I digress. So, what was the most heartbreaking to me during this entire ordeal in Ireland was just the spectacle it presented of the celebration for the ability to murder. Now, what we and what a lot of people argue against and really have an issue with when it comes to abortion is we've the world has done, and sin has done such a good job to diminish what that being a human life in the first place. So it's barely looked at as murder, because they'll tell you when you say you are murdering a child, they will debate whether it's a child or not in order to make the excuse for the murder itself. So not just that issue alone, but really it boils down to what I consider to be a Romans 1 issue. And when I say a Romans 1 issue, I'm speaking of the idea that we are at a point in humanity, in our society as a whole, where, and it's happened, for centuries. It's not just us, but we are at a point where sin is not only allowed and acceptable, whatever type of sin, fornication, adultery, murder of children, lying, all of those things. So not only is it just acceptable, but Romans tells us that not only will we accept sin, or people will accept sin, but they will also celebrate those who do commit sin. And I feel like, prophetically speaking, the celebration that took place for the people who were pro-choice in Ireland was such an example of that. Was just a very sad moment just for me, watching the videos, seeing the pictures of the celebration. Broke my heart. And it broke my heart for a couple of reasons. One, because I think that there are many, many people that are deceived that did not consider that they were celebrating the murder of children, but were more or less celebrating what people have taken to become a feminist movement or a women's rights movement. They've mashed together these things. They've mashed together this idea that unless women can choose to kill their babies, they don't have full rights. They don't have control or power. And so feminism as a whole has done a terrible disservice to the idea of women having equality, of women being right, with equating it to the ability to murder your child. And so what many people were celebrating in their mind was they were celebrating this equality movement because the two are so intertwined in politics and bureaucracy and society. They were celebrating the ability for their voice to be heard, and this equality, this feminist thing. However, I think many of them didn't really consider that they were crying tears over the ability to murder a child. And I don't think that anyone, if you were to walk up to somebody on the street, if I were to walk my 2-year-old daughter with me on the street, and I walked up to a person and I said, "Sir, should I have the right to kill this girl?" That person, unless they were insane, would say, "No, you have no right to kill that." In fact, I would go to jail. I would go to court. I may even face the death penalty if I murdered my 2-year-old daughter. So what if I murdered my 2-hour-old daughter? Am I then under the same law, and do I still risk the same consequences for murdering my 2-hour-old daughter? Well, according to the law, and according to what most people, even people that are pro-choice, they would say, yes, you are still subject to the law, and you would still go to jail. You would still be charged with murder for murdering your daughter 2 hours after she was out of the womb. So then you say, well, what about 2 hours before she's born and my wife is going through labor? Well, then they would pause and they would say, well, no, because that's still a baby. In 2 hours it's going to be born. It's going to be a child. And then you say, okay, well, what about 2 days now before the baby is born. And then you can keep going back 2 days every time. Keep going back 2 days to at some point that they have to make a decision. They have to make an honest assessment of what it is that is inside of the womb. They have to choose that at some point what was a child becomes not a child. And even science, even the scientific community will tell you that they're at least coming to the point where even secular scientists are acknowledging the heartbeat being the first sign of life. And then some secular science is even saying at this point now that conception alone makes it a life. We, of course, as Christians, believe that conception is that life begins at conception because it's a supernatural experience, and that it is God that is creating that life and allowing us to be part of that creation. He's using the mother and father as, or he's using our cells, which in and of themselves are not human, to join together in the miracle of creation of life. So when those two cells meet, which independently are not life, the second they do meet and they conceive, and that child is born, or not born, but conceived and created, at that point it's life. So the argument gets very shaky and it gets very unsolid at the point where you start going back a day at a time, a couple of days, a week at a time, asking, okay, when is it no longer a child? Then it becomes opinion. It doesn't really become science-based, because the clump of cells argument, as many people will tell you, that anyone who is logically thinking, any person that is honest, even if they don't believe in God, any person that is scientifically honest will tell you the clump of cells argument is a dead issue. There is a point that science acknowledges conception being conception. So, with all of that being said, if you take those things into consideration, these women and men in Ireland and across the world, because there was celebration for Ireland in America and other countries, they were celebrating the ability to kill. They were celebrating the ability. They weren't celebrating their choice to kill. They were celebrating the ability to murder a child. They were celebrating the ability to murder a person. And the ability to continue to not call it a person, whether science agrees or disagrees. And so to me that's heartbreaking, because again, and I want to be clear, not all of the women will tell you, or the people involved that we're celebrating, not all of them will tell you, I'm celebrating the ability to kill my child. I don't think many of them think about that. I think they're really blinded by pride. They're blinded by politics. They're blinded by sin and what feminism has done to equate abortion with female choice and freedom and the rights to be an equal woman and have equal value in society. I will be on board all day long for that idea. I will be on board all day long for a woman to be able to choose what she does with her own body. But once you introduce another body into the situation, once you introduce another life into that body, it no longer becomes the body. The woman is carrying another body. It is not their choice anymore to terminate the life of another human being that happens to reside in their body. Conjoined twins, neither of them has the right to choose what happens to the other. They are connected. One twin lives sustained and connected to the other twin. Neither of them have more or less rights from the other. One twin cannot say, kill this other twin because I am the better twin. They are connected, and the same thing with a woman and a child in her womb. That woman, once that child is conceived, no longer has rights to take the life of that child. In fact, if I go out today and I drink and drive, and I kill a woman who is pregnant, regardless of how far along in the pregnancy she is, if I kill her and the pregnancy is terminated because she is dead and the child inside of her is dead, I am charged with double homicide by the law. I am charged with the taking of two lives. It's hypocrisy, ladies and gentlemen. It's hypocritical for us as Christians and as people to say that one life values over another. And it's sickening to me to hear someone to say an argument of, well, this child may have Down syndrome, they may be mentally retarded, they may have autism, they may have something like this. How dare the world inconvenience me with a child who will take more work than a standard child, or better yet, and worse off yet at the same time, how dare the world inconvenience me with having to take care of a healthy child that will take money and time away from my selfish life, or inhibit me from being able to do what I want. It doesn't even have to be about sex, folks. It has to do with the pride of life and the selfish nature that we as human beings cling to so hard. We cling to our selfish nature so hard that we will cry and we will be devastated if we don't get our way. We will celebrate with tears of joy and screaming and shouting when we have the ability to choose to murder a child, because that child could possibly inconvenience me. My wife has an aunt and uncle who had a child who recently passed. She was older. She had been alive for, I think, 20-something years. And she was born with so many health issues that for all intents and purposes, she was a vegetable, unable to function at all without any help from her parents. She couldn't move, she couldn't eat, she couldn't go to the bathroom without some sort of medical help. And this man and woman could have taken the easy road. They could have taken the selfish road and said, we already have children, or we're going to have more children, and we can't take on this burden and care for this person who we, for lack of better terms, may as well have been a baby sustained in the womb, but it would have been easier if this child had stayed in the womb, because they wouldn't have had to devote as much time to feeding and wiping and carrying around as this child grew older and eventually passed. Would have been easier if it had just been a baby. So not only was this a burden as a child, but was a burden as a young adult, toddler into their adulthood until they recently passed. Rest in peace, Carolyn. But they had every right as a human being to say, this is hard. This is something that I cannot do. And yet the calling of God in their life and the wisdom of the Holy Spirit and the truth of who God is said, no, we cannot take a life that is not ours to take. It is God alone who allows who lives and who dies. Not me, not the state, not the doctor. It is God alone. And they cared for this child into adulthood and gave so much of their life up. They gave up vacations. They gave up events. They gave up time for their other healthy children to care for Carolyn. Because the indwelling of the Holy Spirit said, no, this life is not yours to take. And they didn't. And God bless them for what they've done. And may she rest in peace. And I have the utmost confidence that she is worshiping the Father right now. And how jealous am I? So yes, my heart breaks that a human person can celebrate the ability to remove the potential for life of another human being. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Instead of having an abortion, send me a message on Facebook. I will fly to wherever you are and adopt your child. My wife and I will take all the babies and give them an opportunity to live. It just simply hurts. And I'll say it again like I said it at the beginning of this podcast. As a Christian person, if you are a champion for pro-choice, you have some repenting to do. If God grants that repentance. Because no Christian person can ever say that it is okay to take the life of another person. Period. Well, that's sorry it got heavy. I don't intend it to be that way, and so I apologize, but I do hope that someone could hear this at some point and be moved to think more about their choices and about defending the right for life of children. I do hope you guys are doing good. I apologize for not doing a podcast last week, but I'm glad that I was able to do it this week, and I need to be better about it. So for some happy news, before we go into the rest of the day being sad because of what I've talked about, it's been a very good, busy week. I started driving for Uber, which is cool. I only do Uber deliveries for food, but I've spent about total of about 8 hours out on the road, not the entire time driving, but spending time out there. I bring a book, I read. I've got a couple books on audio, on Audible that I need to listen to. But I've been making a little bit of money. I'm excited because I'm kind of hopeful that this will be something to sustain my family when I retire. But it was fun. I met some cool people. I like the idea of going out there and delivering food. I have an opportunity to say hello to folks, and it's neat. It's been really nice. I'm gonna go out and drive again today when I get the chance. It's a little extra pocket money, but my wife and I, and let me just say, as an idea, it's been cool because Rachel and I talked for like an hour last night. We talked about like our plan, and we have a little bit of debt. We've got some credit card debt. We've got a couple car payments that we make, but our goal and our focus is to do Uber, pay off our all of our credit card debt, and then be debt free when I retire. So. With that being said, guys, I don't want to keep the podcast going much longer. My wife is actually trying to call me, so I'm going to give her a call back. But thank you for joining the podcast. Check out thedirtychristian.com. Check out my Facebook page. Also, check out the Drew Kaler page, which I do for geeky stuff, comic books, and video games, and streaming and stuff like that. Check me out on Patreon, patreon.com/thedirtychristian. I love you guys. God bless. I'm Drew, Dirty Christian. I'm out.